having come so far, we've talked about a lot of common errors, and we're going to take that class further today. All right. So I'd like you to, if you missed any of the videos or any of the classes, just probably have to go back, and search for them and catch up to speed what we have been dealing about and know what we deal or what we talk about when we talk about what we're dealing with when we talk about common errors in English. All right. So today we're going to take it from where we stopped, and then we're going to look at more examples or more common errors that we have in English. All right. So the first one we're going to be looking at today is synonymous to or synonymous with. Now, prepositions have a very, very particular way to be used, and if you use them with words that they don't go with, you tend to create a grammatical error or a blunder, as the case may be. So there's the word synonymous to and synonymous with. Let's look at this sentence. Wealth is not necessarily synonymous to happiness. Sentence 1. And wealth is not necessarily synonymous with happiness. All right, so let's look at it. Let's analyze it. Many people mistakenly say synonymous to instead of synonymous with. You cannot. Synonymous to is the wrong one. Synonymous with, things are not synonymous to, they are synonymous with, because you're not necessarily you're comparing. So you compare this with that. So synonymous with, not synonymous to. All right. The next one we're going to be looking at is substitute with or substitute for. Substitute with, substitute for. Look at this example. He substituted Ayo for Tenny. Sentence 1. And in sentence 2, he substituted Ayo for or with Tenny. First one, he substituted Ayo for Tenny, and he substituted Ayo with Tenny. Now, which of them is correct? Both of them are correct, but people think that it's more official to use a synonymous or a substitute for. Substitute for is much more correct than substitute with. Okay, you can substitute butter with margarine, or you can substitute butter for margarine. Whichever you choose, you are still grammatically correct. However, substitute for is a better way to go. All right, there's this common one among students: study and read. I've always said that there are no two English words that mean exactly the same thing. Okay, and if every student understands this, they will tend to make lesser mistakes when it comes to speaking English and using the right words at the right time. So we have study on one hand and read on the other hand. Let's look at this example. Don't disturb James. He is reading the material. Don't disturb James. He is studying the material. The difference between study and read is basically this. When you study, you spend a very considerable amount of time and effort. The effort is actually very obvious. Okay? So when somebody is studying, there is a very, very obvious, environment. There's an obvious amount of time that he spends. He spends time and effort. This effort can actually be very seen. Okay, so you see somebody also focused and concentrated on a particular material, the person is studying. Okay, but when you read something, there's basically no extreme effort that is applied. So when you study, there is a significant effort, but when you read, it's just kind of haphazard, right? You're just doing it because you want to, basically. So there's really no special effort you add, and it doesn't really, when you read something, it doesn't take a whole lot of your time. It doesn't take a whole lot of time. So you can just read something. Like, for example, when I walk on the road, I read a lot of stuff on the road. New billboards, program events, I just read. That's not studying, that's what? Reading, okay? So the right thing to say, especially for a student who is preparing for an exam, is he or she is studying, not necessarily reading. To say that a student is reading would mean to say, or you'd mean that the student is just, reading for pleasure or just looking at something for pleasure. Okay, all right. So the right thing is study when you are talking about a particular effort being applied, to reading something. All right. The next one we're going to be looking at is sit, S-I-T, and seat, S-E-A-T. All right. So the first difference we can even spot out is the pronunciation. All right. So we're talking about sit, S-I-T, and S-E-A-T. Now, S-I-T is an intransitive verb, right? Now, S-E-A-T can be both a verb and a noun, right? So the piece of furniture that you sit on is a seat, S-E-A-T, right? While S-I-T is an intransitive verb, okay? So, you can have sit, the past tense, sat, all right? You can have S-E-A-T. Now, S-E-A-T can also be a verb, but it's going to be a transitive verb, okay? S-E-A-T will be seated, S-E-A-T-E-D, right? The past tense, if you're using it as a verb, definitely, right? But it's very, very expedient that you understand that primarily S-I-T is a verb and S-E-A-T is a noun. Now, you can use S-E-A-T as a verb, but it's going to be a transitive verb. I hope you know what transitive verb is. All right, so you have sit, sat, sitting. Then you can have S-E-A-T, sits, and seated. Okay, so that's the difference. They are basically correct. You can use them, but you have to be careful when you're using it. So you don't use S-E-A-T when you're talking about a verb. So you don't say he wants to sit on the chair and use S-E-A-T. The right one to use in that context is S-I-T. All right. We're going to go on to the next one, and it is sit on a desk or sit at a desk, right? When you're talking about, in your workplace, probably you have a desk with which you have your files and your computer and whatever. Do you sit on a desk or you sit at a desk? Now, of course, sitting on a desk is going to imply something different. It means that you're actually sitting on, a piece of furniture. Are you following? But if you're not referring to that action of sitting on the furniture, which is the desk, the right thing to say is sit at a desk. Okay, so you probably have gone to the bank before, and you go to the cashier. Now, what is she doing? She's not sitting on a desk. She's sitting at a desk. All right. So sitting, you don't sit on a table for dinner. You sit at the table. Okay. That's basically it. So you don't sit on, even though that implies a different meaning entirely, because you can actually, even though it's wrong, you can actually sit on a table, right? But the right thing to say when you are talking about somebody that's behind, or using the table for, work purposes, the person is sitting at a desk. So you could just say, go and meet James. He's sitting at his desk. Okay? So that is basically it. Now, birds sit on a tree. They don't sit at a tree. Birds sit on a tree. So that's a different thing. All right. So sit on is wrong when you are talking about somebody that is using the desk, for a files, computer. So you say the person is sitting at his desk. All right. Now there's another one that I'm sure you're going to find very, very familiar. Do you say the truth? Do you tell the truth? Or do you speak the truth? Now I've heard a lot of, my younger brother usually says, he's not telling the truth, he's not telling the truth. I've heard other people say, he's not saying the truth, he's not saying the truth. I've heard other people also say, he's not speaking the truth, he's not speaking the truth. Which of them is correct? Are they all correct? Or are they all wrong? Well, let's look at it. Let's look at it in this. Are you saying the truth? Question or sentence 1. Are you telling the truth? Sentence 2. Are you speaking the truth? All right. Of all the three of them, of all three, the only one that is not acceptable is, are you saying the truth? You don't say the truth. You either tell the truth or you speak the truth. All right? The same goes for lying. You don't say a lie. You either tell a lie or you speak a lie. All right? So saying the truth is out of it. You don't use the word saying when you're talking about truth or lies. So you either tell them or you speak them. Clear? All right, that's that about that. The next one we're going to talk about is another one you hear when you see people struggling for space, maybe on a chair or or in a public transport bus. All right. So you hear people say shift or dress. Dress, madam, dress, I beg. All right. Now the word dress there, of course, is grammatically wrong. Dress means something entirely different, and it has nothing to do with, moving as regards position. So you can say, can you? Let's look at this sentence. Could you dress? Could you help me to dress so I can sit? Or could you help me to shift so I can sit? Right? Even though two of them sound very, very terrible. Right? Just say, please shift. Right? Or could you shift, please? Right? Now, the actual thing or the correct thing to say here is shift, not dress. Dress is a piece of material that belongs to ladies. Have you noticed that guys don't say dress? Guys rather say outfit, or their shirts and trousers. But the word dress is specifically for the ladies. A guy does not use the word dress. Okay, that's just by the way, right? In addition to what we are talking about already. So another meaning for dress could be, you could dress a wound, to make something clean, to make it neat, or as a verb, yeah, to dress someone up. Okay, so that's what dress basically means. So you cannot use it to mean to move from a position. The only word allowed to be used for that in that situation is the word shift. Could you please shift so that I can sit down? All right. So to shift means to move from one position to another, creating space for someone or something else. All right. There's been a controversy over the years about, the words that are permitted to be used when showing sympathy. All right. And the two words in question is sorry and what a pity. Personal opinion, I think that what a pity is just so extreme. I feel it is too far. You don't have to go that far to show that you are sympathetic. All right. However, a lot of scholars have agreed that you only use the word sorry when you are the victim or when someone is the victim of a situation. So if Sheyi falls down, right, I could tell him, oh, sorry. Why? He is the victim of the incident. But if something happened to someone he knows and he was telling me, sorry will not be appropriate in that situation, okay? Because he's not the culprit, he's not the victim of the situation, right? So some other English scholars have agreed that in such a situation, it's better to say what a pity, or that sounds bad, or I'm sorry about your friend. Do you get it? So, but when you just say sorry, it is ungrammatical because the person you are talking to is not the actual victim. Sorry only works when you are talking to the person that is the victim of an accident. So they just said that sorry works only in that context, but what a pity, or I am sorry about, and then you mention the person involved. So you don't use sorry for someone who is not the victim of the incident. All right. The next one we're going to be looking at is spare and extra, and I like this one. I like it because I learned it a long time ago, and I'm really careful when I use the both. Okay, so talk about spare and extra. They mean totally different things. Spare is taken in case of an emergency, while extra is taken just to add. So if you can say I took extra cash, right, to add to what I have. Now, if you say I took spare cash, you are saying that there's a likely tendency for something to happen to what you already have, and then you took spare, right? Then extra is just an addition to what you already have. So you probably go to a restaurant and you're ordering for food. You won't tell them to put spare food. No, you tell them to put extra food or extra meat or extra fish or something, right? Not spare. Do you understand? So you don't call it extra tire. You call it a what? A spare tire. A spare is what you have just in case there is an emergency. An extra is an addition to what you already have. All right. The next one we're going to be looking at is sit and sit down. Now, you might be saying that these things are really, really common, but that's the point. It's in the commonness, right, that, the mistakes are. just because it's common is one of the real reasons that we actually make mistakes, because we feel, oh, it's something simple, nobody should actually get it wrong. So sit and sit down is in one of those categories, right? Sit down, going straight to the point, say, okay, let's say I want to sit on the couch and I want to sit down on the couch. Now, sit down is a redundant statement. It's a redundancy. Why? Because the action of sitting already implies that you are going down. It's a downward movement. You don't sit, okay, even though sit up is an idiom, right? You don't sit up physically. You sit down. So you don't need to add the word or the preposition down any longer, because sitting already connotes a downward movement. All right, we're going to go into the next one. Strong meat or tough meat. Which would you rather say? Would you say tough meat or strong meat? Look at this example. Why didn't you eat your meat? It was strong. Or why didn't you eat your meat? It was tough. Now, as much as we understand what the person is trying to say when the person says strong, meat is not strong. When you say meat is strong, you are trying to say that it is something, you are relating it to something like a stone or things that are as hard as stone. But of course, no meat is as hard as that. So you don't say my meat was strong. You say my meat was what? It was tough. Now, when you say something is tough, it is hard to chew or hard to eat or hard to put into, cut into pieces, right? So my meat, I couldn't eat my meat because it was tough. So do not say strong meat, you say tough meat, all right? The opposite of that will be, so what will be the opposite of, a tough meat? It will be a meat or meat that is tender. So you hear people say boil the meat until it is tender, right? So that's the opposite of a tough meat. So when the meat is not tough, it is tender, all right? The next one we're going to be looking at is sweet or interesting. Sweet or interesting. Examples. Is the novel you just finished very sweet, or is the novel you just switched very interesting? Let's look at this carefully. When something is interesting, we are saying that it attracts your attention because it is very exciting, right? Now, I must have mentioned earlier in one of the episodes of our Common Errors in English that anytime you use the word sweet, you are talking about something that has sugar in it, okay? Or something related to the taste of sugar, all right? So you cannot use the word sweet to talk about the quality of a movie, okay? The only word that goes with that is interesting. The movie was captivating. The movie was, gripping. Those are words that you could use with movies, right? Or any other thing that has to do with actions. But when it comes to sweets, it's something related to sugar-like things, all right? Or things that have sugar in them. So the novel you just read is interesting, not is very sweet, okay? Moving on. We'll look at trickish and tricky. Trickish and tricky. All right. Now, this is similar to what we treated when we talked about peppery and pepperish, and we already said that the word is not pepperish but peppery. Now, let's look at this. Which of them is correct? Trickish or tricky? Just like pepperish is wrong, here trickish is also wrong. You say tricky when somebody is tricky or something is tricky. It is not straightforward. It's probably deceptive or deceiving. Okay, so you don't say Sheyi is very trickish. No, you say Sheyi is very tricky. All right, the word trickish does not exist, just like the word pepperish does not exist. All right, next one. Tidy or arrange. Tidy or arrange. I spent all morning arranging the room, and I spent all morning tidying the room. Okay? When you are talking about, the concept or the idea of putting things where they are supposed to be, where they are supposed to be, the right word to use there is tidy. So, and it's usually used for a place that is messed up. Now, something doesn't have to be messed up, or a thing doesn't have to be messed up before you arrange it. They could be in order, and you could just choose to arrange. So we have arrange and rearrange, right? So for you to use arrange, it doesn't have to be messed up, right? But when you use tidy, it means things are where they should not be. So you can say tidy up your room or tidy the room. But arranging your room would mean something else, right? When you arrange something, you are putting them in not necessarily where they're supposed to be, but in order. So you hear arrange them in ascending order or in descending order. So they don't have to be scattered. You just have to put them in a particular order. That's what arrange is. But when you tidy up something, you are saying that it is not, or the things you are tidying up are not where they should be. Hence, you have to tidy them up. You tidy the room, you tidy your office, you tidy your table, right? But you cannot arrange your table. You cannot arrange your room, all right? You cannot arrange your office. You can only tidy them up or tidy them. I hope you get that. The next one we're going to be talking about is the word toast and woo. The word toast and woo. Now, you hear these days when guys want to ask a lady out. I don't know. I think it's a slang, basically. I think it's basically a slang. But somehow this slang has crept into the English language. So when a guy wants to talk to a lady, people say he's toasting her or he wants to toast her. Well, that English is not acceptable, or that word is not acceptable as regards the action of talking to a lady. So when you want to talk to a lady, you don't toast a lady, you woo a lady. Okay, now to me personally, woo sounds very negative. So instead of saying woo, I just want to ask a lady out. So we're going to put an end to this class at this point, and in the next class we'll continue on more common errors in English. I'll see you in the next class.